Yeah, hi, good morning. So let's begin our session now. Okay, so in our last session, we started understanding about logging in real-time applications. So what is the importance of logging, loggers, so logs, whatever it is. So the importance of logging in every real-time application we understood in the last session. So the main advantage of logging is all about it will help us in so many ways, like with respect to debugging our issues and okay recording the trace of user actions or logic execution. So the way how logic is executing. So these are all information we can trace or we can track by using the logging, right? So we can monitor, we can track execution status, application performance. So even we can track all the user activities also, who the users who are okay utilizing our application, we can track their activities also. So in every way, loggers will help us. So that's why logging is the most important thing in every real-time application in any programming language. So now when it comes to Spring Boot point of view, yes, we have by default integrated because it's 100% required okay tool in every real-time project, right? So that's why what Spring Boot thought here it is, okay, let's go with default integration of logging framework with SLF4J logging framework. So SLF4J is already integrated as part of the Spring Boot. So that means whenever we take in any Spring Boot module, any module, okay, especially you no need to add any SLF4J related dependencies. By default, it is supporting SLF4J. So we saw all that information in the last session. So the main agenda of writing the logs means generally we used to write sysouts. That means system.out.println in our Java onwards, we used to write that things for understanding purpose or recording the flow from one class to another class or one method to another method. So result status, response status, request details, response details, whatever it is, error details, exception details, to print all the information, to track all the information we used to write sysouts. But the recommended is always we should not write anytime sysouts. We have to go always with logging framework. So we have to write respective log levels. We have to set and we have to write only log messages but not sysouts. So that is what we did in the last session. So we removed everywhere something like system.out.println and we replaced with loggers. So how to create a logger object we saw in the last session, like it's all about a predefined classes and methods you have to use, logger factory and static method get logger. Here you have to pass the current class dot class information. The current class. Why you have to pass the current class dot class information means whenever the logs are being printed, it will help us always the current class name. So what is the class name? So if you see here, yeah. So whatever the class name you given, that class name will be printed in the logs level. So you can see the class name. So that is the advantage of passing that class. So instead of one class name, if you are passing some other class name, whenever this log message is printed, then what will happen? It will not print this class name. Whatever you given here, that will be printed. So that's why the recommended thing is whenever we create a log instance, please make sure same class dot class you are provided. Okay, same class itself, so that now whenever this information is printed, it will always give same class name like user controller from the package itself, including package name and everything. It will give the information so that it will be easy for us whenever we are seeing this log messages in future. We can easily understand, okay, this line, this message being printed from the so and so controller class from so and so package, like that. So it's very easy for us to identify that messages are being printed from which class. So request came to controller and then it went to service and then it went to repository, like that you can have a trace. So it's easy for us. So that's why loggers are going to helpful us. And not only this, loggers are helping us with respect to timestamps also. So if you see here, by default loggers are always printed with the at what time that message being printed. That means at what time JVM execution reached that area. So the time is also being printed with respect to milliseconds also. So this will help us to understand the flow in a second which is executed, something like that. Okay, so if you see here, even it is printing milliseconds point of view also. So which line is printed first, which line is printed later. So it is giving all the information. So if you return only sysouts, we can't see all this information by default. whenever we printed a message. We can't see the timestamp, we can't see the class name, we don't see anything. Just whatever the message information we passed, only that will be printed instead of time, status, all these things, and time and class name, all this. So that is how loggers are helping us. That is what we discussed in the last session. And when it comes to the only thing is what we understood in the last session, again here it is, we have total 5 levels supported in the Spring Boot with respect to SLF4J. We have total 5 levels, 5 log levels. So today we have to understand what is this log levels, at what time these log levels will be activated, which log levels we have to utilize what scenarios, and how to enable so on so respect to loggers with respect to overall application level as well as overall any specific to any package level, like that. All the information we will discuss in today's session. Okay. So in last session, what we discussed is, okay, we understood finally the importance of loggers, and I said 5 log levels we are having. And whenever we return a message, so that means whenever you got a log object, you will see always 5 methods: info, debug, error, warn, and trace. So these things will be called as, these methods are created based on these log levels: info, debug, error, warn, and trace. Now the point is, what is this log levels? Why 5 categories are provided by the logging framework? Why we are having these many categories? Why not only one single category like similar to sysout? Why we have already these many log levels? Yes, there is a reason. Let's try to understand that. So what is the reason and all? We'll try to understand. Okay. So even I said last week, one more thing also we observed: hierarchy of the log levels. What is the meaning of hierarchy of log levels? So this is the biggest hierarchy, nothing but, so whenever you enable the trace, automatically in your application level, in entire application level, or wherever you enable the trace, simply debug messages will be printed, debug will be printed, trace will be printed because you enable trace only, and as well as info will be printed, error will be printed, warn will be printed. Why? Because trace is the highest hierarchy. So below that only debug. So debug, info, error. So that means if you are enabling debug, then trace messages will not be printed. Even though you return so many places, nowhere trace messages will be printed. Only debug, including debug, below hierarchy info, error, warn will be printed, like that. But by default, every logging framework is always enabled with info. Default log level is info. Default log level is info. That means whenever, if you are not giving any log level, means by default info is enabled. Nothing but you can see all the info messages as well as below level error messages as well as warning messages. That means wherever you return like log.warn, log.error, log.info, these 3 levels messages will be printed. Now the question is, what is this? At what scenarios we have to write all these things? What is the purpose? Let's try to understand. See, generally we know that, right? Sometimes, see, whenever, yeah, I already discussed at this point yesterday also. See, generally, whenever we are doing some task, generally what we will do, we will define lot of steps. We will define lot of steps. And sometimes what we will say, we will utilize only few steps by default. By default, we will utilize only few steps to do the task, to complete the task, to complete that task. But some exceptional cases means, maybe assume the task what you are trying to do, it's not happening as expected. Maybe in between you got some issues. Some exceptional cases or some issues level, generally we will enable other steps also. So that means the steps what you defined overall here, you are not utilizing all by default every time. You are just utilizing only few things. If everything is going good, you are not coming back to the some other steps. But if something is went wrong, then we are going with other steps also. So this kind of planning generally we will do in our real life also, right? So that means in a specific scenarios only we will go with some specific some specific steps. So similar point of view, what a real-time application is saying here it is, whenever we are working with real-time application, what it was saying is, whenever we are developing an application, whenever we are developing a crucial application or any real-time application, so every real-time application is a crucial application only based on the business point of view. So what these guys are saying is, whenever you feel like, okay, the messages has to be printed has to be printed all the time, all the time, just go with info. Just go with the info. So that means what kind of messages? For example, I'll write a statement here it is. So what is this? I thought user login is doing. So my intention is this message is most important every time. Why? The reason is if I did not return this message, I don't have a trace like who is logging into my application. So login is the most important crucial step in every application, right? So that's why I want to track whenever a request came from front end, okay, any client application, I want to track which email ID, I mean, which user logged into that. So that means I'm taking simply email ID. So with this, what will happen? Every application now 2,000 users sent the request or whoever it is. That means what will happen? All 2,000 users information is tracking here. So that means what I made here, I want to make sure this tracking every time in successful scenario, bad scenario, whatever, it doesn't matter for me. Simply a request came and I want to track it. So in such scenarios, you have to go with info messages. The messages has to be printed all the time. Okay, cool. Now, what is the warn? Warn means warning. So when you have to go for warning. So first of all, here you need to know two things. One is difference between warning and error. Warning and error. So what is in general, the difference between error and warning? What is the difference between error and warning in general, irrespective of our logging or whatever it is? See, warning is all about what? Something like you're warning like don't do or go for better approach. Okay, it's all like in programming point of view also like something like better approach. So that means assume a user is trying to do some person. Generally what we used to say whenever our friends are doing some other activity, we used to suggest them, hey man, whatever you are doing good, okay, but if you are taking this approach, it is a better approach, something like that. We will give a suggestion. And sometimes few people are not listening, even few people are following same old approach, you will just warn them like, okay, don't go with that approach, don't go with that approach. So just please go with this approach. This is the mandatory approach. You whatever you went with some other approach, it's okay, but please go with this approach. Like that, you are just providing kind of suggestion, okay, but you are not stopping the execution, you are not stopping entirely, you are not blocking the activity. Simply the thing is you are just providing a warning to the person like don't do this next time onwards, it's better to go with so and so other option. Like that, you are giving the warning messages. Now error means what in general? When it comes to error will always blocks or fails the execution. So it will okay, it will interrupt the process, it will interrupt the process. So that is what error. So error will block our process, error will fail our process or execution, or it will interrupt the execution. But warning point of view, generally when we are going to give warnings, something like going for better approach, like that. So that means whenever in your application you feel like, okay, that message, people are, okay, assume something like, I'll give you some scenario, not scenario, some just basic thing. Assume you are defining some approaches. Okay, assume something like a user, let's do like this. A user with an email ID, some email ID is trying to do login, some other email ID format, he was trying to do the login. So in such cases, you observe some abnormal things. So in such cases, you want to print some warning messages to the developer point of view. I mean tracing point of view or whatever it is, analysis point of view. I want to print like, okay, so this email ID is tried 5 times continuously, something like that. But very rare case you will use this level, guys. Very rare case you will use. So I don't think in my life I written at least one time warning message. So that, but we are just understanding the things. So that means what this message was saying here, it is saying like this, you are not stopping that person. Simply in the logging level, you are printing a warning as a point of view like, okay, this email user ID tried 5 times continuously like that. Just kind of warning like that. Now, what is the error? So that means these kind of things you can go for warning messages point of view. So that's okay. Now, what is the error? Yeah, it itself is saying like we have to trace, we have to log always error messages. What is the error messages? We will see generally in our in our programming Java programming exceptions. So that means whenever we want to print the exception reason, why you got an exception, null pointer exception, okay, arithmetic exception, bounds exception, class not found, whatever exceptions it is. Whenever you got some exceptions, if you want to log that exception, log means printing, you have to use always error. So that means if you go to our application, for example, if you go somewhere else, yeah, assume for example, if you have try here, right? So what we are doing here, we got an exception. Maybe assume some reason you are getting some exception. That's why you handled it. But here instead of writing system.out.println like exception occurred, what you can do is we have to write log.error. Log.error. So you have to write log.error. So that is how, and you can provide some logger exceptions also here, something like that. So you have all overloaded methods. Error messages only string message, string comma object, throwable object. So what is the error reason? You written a simple message also. Exception occurred. Like that you written your own message and what is the reason and what is the exception object. So that means simply what method you are using. What level log level you are using is error. So that means whenever you want to trace or whenever you want to log error scenarios, like especially exception scenarios, I'm telling you, exceptions level, you will see always, you have to log always as error. So what is the advantage of this? Let's try to understand. I'll show you practically. So okay, now in my entire application flow, okay, I'm writing just like error, I'm not writing here. I already given there. Okay. So see here, I'm just writing. Okay, let's start the application again. So very rare case you will write warn guys. I'm telling you, and trace is also very rare. But some, I mean, I'm telling you already. I told you already. 90% you will write this. Okay, 5 to 10% you will write debug. And error is all. Oh yeah, definitely in catch blocks level. Generally, you will write this one also. You will write like 5 to 10%. I mean, especially in the catch blocks point of view. Warning very rare case. Trace is also very rare case. So trace is very rare case point of view. We'll just do that. Okay. So anyway, let's see here. Okay, our application started. Okay, we given log level debug right earlier. I'll explain this property what is today. So let me disable this property. I'll explain after this explanation. Yeah, now it is started only info. See, if you observe here, even from the okay, let me do one thing. Yeah, if you observe here, even Spring Framework point of view, you are seeing 95%, 99% is only info messages and they given warning. So that means just try to understand what is the warning they are trying to. That means they are trying to give some solutions to us. Hey man, as a developer, you've taken some approach, but instead of that, if you taken some other approach, it will be better like that. They given something. They are saying like open in view is enabled by default. Therefore, database may be performed during view rendering explicitly. So they are giving like something is set by default, something enabled. It's better to disable. Like that, they are giving suggestion to us. That is the warning they are giving to the developer. They are saying like something is the property enabled. It's better to disable. Like that, they are giving a message to us. But it's not like this message is not saying like your application will not work. No, that kind of messages we should not write in the warn. I mean, you just give the warning. That's all. That kind of things. So and rest of all are info only. Okay, cool. Now even we written error also, right? Now let's handle that exception. Is that okay? I think logger is the better option. Swagger is the better option. Okay. So we return user create. Okay, send the request now. Now see here, something, whatever it is you got. But if you see here, null pointer exception you got. Now if you observe here what message got printed, error message is printed. Why? We written error. So that means it is easy for us tomorrow when you are having 1,000 lines of log file in front of you. By seeing this label, you can easily understand, okay, at what level error you got, at what timing level you got an error, from which class you got an error. So this label is helping us. This label is helping us, which is a error message, which is a info message, something like that. Now this error message is saying like, whatever we written here in the catch block level, exception occurred. The reason is cannot invoke so and so Java class, and because it is null, like that you given the message, and whatever you given here, that is also printed here. So that means it's giving the labeling. This label is helping us to identify easily where you got an errors and all. So like that in your entire application level, wherever you are getting errors or wherever you are handling exceptions, wherever you are handling the exceptions, it's better to go always with errors, log.error. So in a simple message, see now for example, user created successfully. What is this? It's a simple basic message. So in such cases, you have to use info. You should not use warn, you should not use error. That kind of things you have to go with. So that means now we are clear with at what time we have to go with info. A basic messages, a simple flow messages and all. You have to write always in the info. Okay, a simple messages and everything. And error you understood, warn also you understood. Just suggesting a better approach. If something like that, you will go for the warn. Okay, so like that. Now, when it comes to the last two option, debug, yes, debug is the one thing people will use mostly when comparing with trace. Okay, but what level debug you have to write? So generally what debug will say in this case is, so when you have to go for debug point of view, here it is. For example, I'll give you a scenario. See, I have a client application and I have a server application. Generally, in security point of view, so you will see security classes from tomorrow, guys. Okay, so generally from the security point of view, I'm high level. I'm telling you, there is a concept called as token based authentication. Token based authentication. Yeah, this is the more famous security approach we will follow in every real-time application. We will see same thing from tomorrow onwards. Okay, what will happen generally? A client application, whenever client application requested for this server for first time, what server application will do is it will generate a token. It will generate a token like this, unreadable format point of view. By using some encryption decryption point of view, it will generate a token. And what it will do is this token will be sent again back to the client. On high level, I'm just telling you. Now, next time onwards, what client has to do in this case is client has to send this header. Sorry, client has to send this token whenever client sending request. Whenever client sending a request to the client, I mean client only send the request to server application. It has to attach always. It has to attach always the token, so that server application will validate that token. Is it given earlier to the client from my side or not? It is a valid or not? Is it expired or not? Something like that. It will do all the validations, and it will, if everything is good, then only client can access the actual REST service. So API protection, whatever the APIs, For example, it sent request for upload photo, something like that. So before uploading, what it is doing is it is just verifying the token what your client sent is good or not. If everything is good, then only it will allow to upload the photo. If something is bad, then it will say like unauthorized or something like. So this is all the security point of view. Now my point here it is, whenever client sent a token to the server application, nothing but our Spring Boot application, can we log this token? Can we log this token every time or not? Can we log this token? Whatever the token they are sending, whether it is valid or invalid, leave it. Can I log this token all the time or not? All the time or not? No. The reason is why it's a security token. It's a security token. If it is got compromised means someone else knows about this token, and by using this token, some other persons also can access your server applications from externally or whatever it is. So that means it's a sensitive information. In simple point of view, I can say like it is a sensitive information. Sensitive information. So what generally we used to do is in this case, but sometimes by default, can I log this information means I don't want to log this information every time. It's not required in this case. Every time is not required. But in very rare case, sometimes while okay, you will get some issues. So while debugging the issues, while analyzing the issues, while analyzing the issue, you should know first of all token came or not. Who knows client send the token or not? Without sending the client token, client is reported an issue like I'm uploading the photo, my photo is not uploading. But you have to verify first of all token came or not, and rest of the things like that. But that time you should not log the token every time. But what I have to do? So that means that kind of sensitive information, and wherever you feel like this information is not required every time, in simple point of view, what I can say like every time not required, okay, but required in a specific scenarios, but required in a specific scenarios, those kind of information, those kind of logs, that information you can write in the debug. We can write in debug. We can write in debug. We can write in debug. So that means what will happen with this? So by default, what we understood earlier, by default info log will be enabled. So info means this message will not be printed. That means this token. Now what I will do is log dot debug of token, something like that I am writing. So the moment I am writing like this, what will happen? This token message will not be printed every time in the console. If you see here, only you are seeing info and warn messages from this area, but it's not printing debug. It's not printing any debug. So that means every time it will not debug messages, whatever you return will not be printed by default because log level is default info. But sometimes when you want to analyze your application or you're working on some defect or some error or some problem, you have to see, okay, you have to enable your application logs at a time, all the debug logs. Assume in your entire application level, you return almost 300 places, guys. 300 places you return log.debug messages. All sensitive information or whatever you felt like, only in some specific scenarios, while debugging the application, I want these messages like that. In entire Java classes, you return in 300 places. 300 places. Now I want to enable all these things. How to do that? So by default, what I said, log level equal to info. But these messages will be printed only when you enable log level to debug. So how to do that? That is what. So in this case, Spring Boot framework provided for enabling log level for here. You return debug, right? The debug message is not printed. Assume this is a token, guys. Okay, I'm not saying like this is the okay. I'll write like one more thing here. So it's just like token plus some message I'm writing intentionally like that. So right now what you observed, whenever you started your application, whenever you are sending an application request, you are sending the request, we already observed debug is not printing, right? Debug message is not at all printing because the default log level is info. Now how to enable? So in this case, Spring Boot given a property called as logging.level. Logging.level. So by using this logging.level property, we have to enable the log levels. We have to enable the log level. So that means go to the properties file. Okay, so I'm using the logging.level property. So here, what we have to do is we have to enable something like debug or whatever it is. But the problem here it is what this logging level property is saying is, okay, so star, I'll give star. What is the meaning of star? Let's try to understand. The star represents, in this case, at what, in which application, I mean, the star represents which package level, we are enabling the specific, we are enabling the level. So that means it represents which package level. Which package means these packages generally. So now in this case, what I'm trying to say is root. I'm saying the movement root means all packages. Understand? This is where small you have to apply your brain right now. So what this root is saying is root means all packages. So all packages means what? Starting with like java dot star, org dot star, spring framework dot star, even our com dot Dilip IT dot star. So that means the Java classes return in any package, the overall packages, abc dot, a java dot, whatever it is. From every Java class, all the debug messages will be printed. I mean, debug means whatever the level I given here, that will be printed now. So that means the root saying like print all the debugging messages from entire the Java classes, what is being involved while you are executing the program, when you are starting the program. See, that's the reason. Now you will understand why I given root here it is. So let's start our application. See how many logs you will see this time. Thousands of lines you will see that. Okay, let's do one thing. Okay, it's giving some error also internally. Ignore it. Yeah. If you see here, what is this? Thousands of lines you are seeing that. So debug messages from where these are all printing, I'll show you. See, org.hibernate. I'll show you so many things. com.jaxer. Something like org.spring. Something like that. org.hibernate. And I'll show you from the Java also. See, thousands of lines. So if you see here com.delete it, org.spring framework, something even you can see sun.rma, something Java X, that means Java. So what happened from this root, what you given after logging dot level, it taking all the packages, predefined Java classes, user defined Java classes, whatever the Java classes involved as part of your application logic execution, wherever debug messages are written in any Java class, whether Spring Framework, Java point of view, wherever debugs are written, those debug messages are getting printed. So whenever debug level is enabled means automatically info logs will be printed because the hierarchy, this is the hierarchy you have to remember. So info is the smallest hierarchy when comparing with debug. So if you enable debug means definitely you will get the info and warn error also. So that is the point of root. But what is the drawback with giving the root here? It is why I need unnecessarily all Spring Boot, especially Java packages, Hibernate packages. I don't need, right? All these things and all, we don't need it. So unnecessarily see thousands of lines it is being printed in your console. So that means see sun.rmi, whatever it is. That means what is the drawback this? If you are enabling too much logging, okay, in the root level, it will cause your application performance down. So that's why it's not recommended to go with root. But when you are learning something, go with root. Nothing will happen. You can see a lot of internal details, what's being happening, all this information like that. So see here how your application is getting started, all these things. But instead of that, you can go with some other log levels also. I mean, some other package level. Let's see here. So this is representing what, guys? All packages. Java classes from all packages. Java classes from all packages. So that means debug messages will be printed. Yeah, debug messages will be printed. Debug messages printed from all Java classes from all packages. Whether it is a predefined, user defined, doesn't matter. From everywhere it will print. That is what root is saying in this case. Okay, fine. Okay, so that means root you understood, but we don't want to enable root level because it is unnecessarily involving a lot of predefined Hibernate packages, Java, Sun Micro, Sun, all these things. I don't want all those things, right? So I want specific to Spring Framework. Only Spring Framework level I want to enable. This is the technique you have to remember in this overall process, guys. Specific to Spring Framework. In interviews, they'll ask you, I want to enable logs only specific to Spring Framework. What I have to do. In this case, what happened? Java, Hibernate, everything, your own Java classes, everything is involved. The movement route. But I want to involve only specific to Spring Framework. So that in that case, logging dot level. What I said, guys, star represent package. Which package level? So generally, Spring Framework always starts with which package, guys? If you observe in our predefined classes also, I mean, wherever you use the annotations, observe the packages. It is always starting with the org.spring framework, right? org.spring framework. Even if you go here, this annotation point of view also, if you see here, whether it is a Spring or Spring Boot, always starting from what? org.spring framework. So that means I can take this one. org.spring framework equal to debug. Now in this case, what will happen, guys? The debug messages will be printed. So in this case, debug. So that means debug logs are printed wherever you return. Okay, debug logs are printed from the Java classes which are belongs to package starting with, okay, package starting with org.spring framework. org.spring framework. So dot star. That means it will become a base now to print the logs. So after that, any package, but it should start with org.spring framework. Now let's start our application again by giving this property. I am stopping the root now. Okay, what I am doing in this case is this time logging level I am giving this one. Even if you give an info also, only info will be printed. So you can give override manual things also, but by default info only, right? So that's what. So that means what you can understand is by default info is enabled. Now I'm giving debug. Now let's see here. Stop the application. Let's start the application. Yeah. Okay. So let's see now what will happen. What kind of, you will see the debug messages, but not from the sun dot spring framework dot. No, you will not see from these areas. Let's see here. So you are seeing this time debugs only from which packages, guys? If you observe here, org.spring.boot. something like only dot org dot spring framework, org dot spring framework, but not something like what you saw earlier, like sun dot, hibernate dot, java x dot. No, you are eliminating all those things. Okay, so something you can see info messages only, com dot jackson, but debug only coming from you enable debug for only org dot spring framework level. So that's why from there only you are seeing the debug messages. So this is, yeah, somewhat advantages. Now let's send the request again from here. Okay, so I'm sending application from my application, right? Now see here, you got error. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's resolve this error. Okay, I'll do new user data, user details. Okay, with this error will be resolved. Okay, it is restarted. Now see, I'm sending the request again. Yeah, observe the logs again. What you can observe here it is. See, something query is executed. Debugs are printed from where org.spring framework. But if you go to our application point of view, com.dilip.it, what printed? Info printed, warn printed, info printed. But com.dilip.it point of view, where is the debug message? Why debug is not printed? Because I written debug message, right? Why it is not printed? Why it is not printed? It printed only info print, warn is printed. But why this line is skipped? The reason is we enable log level for the only warg.spring.framework. We are not enabled for our Java class packages. So now what I am thinking is, okay, let's keep same thing as it is. Let's go to our application. Now I want to see log messages from my Java classes also, from our own Java classes also. But the advantage of enabling Spring Framework point of view, see guys, I think you can see a lot of details now. See, what is this? Earlier I told you, right? Whenever you send a request, it will go to the dispatcher servlet, and dispatcher servlet internally will call the handler mapping. Then it will check what is the HTTP method, is it available or not. See, dispatcher servlet, and initializing the dispatcher servlet. See here, I'll show you somewhere else also. Yeah, see here which HTTP method it went to where dispatcher servlet. So now dispatcher servlet will pointing to the where handler mapping. So it is asking the handler mapping, hey, can you check this is available or not? Now it is saying like, yes, it is available in the so and so Java class in the so and so method, and this is the request body, like that. And it is saying also internally application.json something, all the messages, whatever it is, like that. So that means what you understood from here. So this, if you are enabling debug logs from the Spring Framework level, you can see lot of internal details. And earlier we understood JPA also, right? See, JPA point of view also, what in service layer, this is our message only. Now come back here, transaction manager JPA, found thread, creating new transaction. So internally they are opening the connection from the connection pool, and they are executed the query. And what is this? Committing the query, committing, rollback, these details we discussed. So these are all details you can see more now. See, completed 200. Okay, that means what dispatcher servlet is saying, like what dispatcher servlet is saying, the request handled successfully and sent request also successfully, 200. Okay, so that means who is sending the response again back to the client? Dispatcher servlet. See, these are all details we discussed 1 month back in the MVC architecture, or maybe as a introduction of MVC architecture, how MVC module will work. I explained you via diagrams, theory point of view. Today you can see all the flow practically. So that's why yesterday I said one more point also, day before yesterday. What? When you want to become a technically programming developer, so you should know two things very carefully. One is how to debug the application runtime level. One is how to utilize the logs. So how you are enabling the log levels, where you are enabling the log levels. If you know these two techniques, you can fix any issue very easily. 95% you can easily fix any issues, or you can easily identify where the problem is happening in entire lines of Java code. That's why I said, see, if you enable these line, these many log level in the Spring Framework level, what happened? You are able to see that dispatcher servlet level request went or not, what request went, I mean client sent what request, so it is reached to which controller and which method, and it is just like JPA committing the JPA, and dispatcher servlet sent response also successfully. See here, writing something user already existed with same email ID. So as request response body method processor. This is what we written, right? So that's what it is, processing response body. So it is processing what response body, and that response body again dispatcher servlet sent it to the client. Why dispatcher servlet is the front controller. So every request and response always goes via dispatcher servlet only. So finally 200, okay. So like that. Now if you are sending again one more request, same, you will see all the messages. See again, you can see request reach it to where dispatcher servlet. That's what we understood. Then it will go to the handler mapping. Handler mapping is saying like yes, it is available. Now give some wrong URL. I don't think you can give wrong URL from here, right? What I can do is here I can paste correct. So let's give some wrong URL. Then it will say okay, I'm giving get put in place of post. Now let's clear the logs first. See, this is how you have to learn it technically, guys. Okay, so that's why I'm showing all these use cases. Send it. Now, what happened? 405 method not allowed. So we know that actually it is expecting post, but we send put. Now, see internally how it is being handled by the dispatcher servlet. Request came to where dispatcher servlet put API user and all these things. Now what it is doing, it is asking the handler mapping, this is available or not. It is saying like it's not available. It's saying like it's not available. I mean, with that combination not available, even though this API is available, but it is a post method. So that's why it is not supported. Put is not supported. Like that, it is giving message to the dispatcher servlet. What dispatcher servlet is doing now? Okay, okay, let me handle like that. That error it is handling. So it is dispatching an error message by passing this information like it's this method is not allowed. So now dispatcher servlet existing from the error status is 405. So who sent finally response to the client? Again from the dispatcher servlet only. The request reached to dispatcher servlet, response also triggered by the dispatcher servlet. In between all these things are happening via handler mapping point of view, all these checks and everything. So see here exception handler. So it is verifying exception handler also not. We understood 1 week back exception handling. So it is verifying with this error any method argument. So HTTP request not method not supported, any exception handler available or not, not available. So then internal it is taking default one. Anything body no, because there is no exception handler, right? So that's why it is saying that. So that is how you can debug your application. You can do the postmortem of your application. And one more thing I said, right? Debugging. This is the debugging option you should know. From the editor, how to do the debugging, how to apply the breakpoints. This I explained in the last session. If you know these two techniques, you can work with any application. Okay, anyway. Now let's come back to our properties file. And what I have to do now? I have to enable my Java classes level also. So my Java classes located in which package? Starting with com.dilip IT. So base package. Simply what I will do is I'll keep this as it is. You can keep this, guys. And I'm giving again log level dot org dot not org com dot Dilip IT. Dilip IT. Yeah. So what is the meaning of this one is again same thing. The logs all are printed from the package which are started from the com.dilip IT. Logs are printed from the Java classes. Debug logs especially debug and below level debug info warn and error all are belongs to the starting with the package called as com.dilip. Com.dilip. So that now what is the use? What is the point you did here? Two levels you set. One is for the only I want logs only from the Spring framework. I want logs only from the com.dilip IT. I don't want Hibernate. I don't want to Java logs. All these things I don't want. So then now let's start your application once again. See, while stopping your application also it is printing lot of messages. You just go through those messages. Yeah. Now I am starting. So this time you can see debug messages from our application also. So the first point what you have to understand is at what scenarios we have to write the debug messages that I explained you. So few information which has to be printed while you're debugging the issue. It should not be printed all the time, but it has to be printed only some specific scenarios. When you are debugging, when you are analyzing, when you enable the debug log. So messages should not be printed all the time, but in a specific scenarios only it has to be, I mean, when you enable the debug level, that messages you have to write always in the debug level. Similarly, trace also. Generally, trace is itself telling you, right? When you have to write trace to trace something important things. That is the purposes trace people will write. So let's go here now. Send the request again. Now, if you observe here, I'll show you from our package itself. See, this is what. What is this? This message printed from user.controller and the package, the level is debug level. User controller and debug. So why? Because this time we enabled at our package level also. Our package level also we enable the debug. So this is how similarly trace also. So trace also beyond the debug, the messages which has to be printed only some you are tracing some. Generally, you should not write to trace most of the times. And debug, yes, we will write debug generally to handle some specific scenarios point of view, like tracking the tokens, whether token really came or not, because we should not expose that information all the time in the basic console logs level. That kind of information we will write. See here, Spring Framework also giving lot of debug information. But when you specially enable it, but as a Java, as a Spring Boot developer, every time I don't need, right? I don't need this information every time, like dispatches are late, contacting the handler mapping. This I know 5 6 years back itself. So that means every time I don't need this information. So, but the sometimes I need this information. So that's why what Spring Framework also did, the messages belongs to the dispatcher servlet or whatever it is. These messages they return in the debug level. So that means they are telling to the developers means we are not giving all the information every time. If you want specifically, just enable the debug. Then these are all messages will be printed like that. They added the logs. They added all these logs. So that is how you have to deal with the log levels. We have to deal with the log levels. So here the package, now I will ask you one more thing. Now if I given here dot web, what will happen guys? This time it will not print debug logs from all the Java classes of Spring Framework. It will print which are started with web package, only web package. So instead of that, my suggestion is just keep up to Spring Framework so that you can see all core module related things or Spring Boot also, or else you can do one more also. It is Spring Framework, and here I can give like if you go to here, what is this package? org.spring.framework.boot. So you can give boot also. So you can customize simply what you are doing. You are customizing. Simply we are customizing the log levels. Okay, and if I given web here dot web, so that means what is the customization we did here? It is logs printed from the boot package, starting from the boot, as well as logs will be printed from the Java classes where it belongs to only this package level. This package and above web dot something will be printed. So you are customizing. If you remove all these things, then by default, Spring Framework level and your Java classes point of view, internally they set info level. So with this is what about the logging, guys. Okay, so this is all about the logging scenario generally. What happened here? I'll do one thing. Okay, so now next point is, so with this, we are done with the logs, especially logs point of view means what are these file levels, at what scenarios you have to write what messages and all, what log level you have to utilize, that we understood. And how to enable the log levels also we understood. When you enable the debug, so don't think like only debug will be printed, info will be printed, error will be printed, warning will be printed. The moment we enable info means wherever you written error and war, if JVM reaching to that area, automatically these messages also be printed. But every application will enable only info. Don't think like any application will involve only error. No, info is the default one. So if you want, you can set only error also, but 99% no one will do. By default, info is enabled. So we will continue with info only, but specific scenarios only we will enable debug and trace. But whenever you enable debug, trace means what? Now wherever you written all these file levels, everything will be printed. So if you enable trace level like that, but very rare case you will write trace also. If you want, I can show you that. What I will do is I'll show you even predefined frameworks itself how much they are enabled the trace point of view. Trace very rare cases people will use. Even I'll show you that one also. See, I enabled a trace in the Spring Framework level, not our pack. Even we are not written anything. What happened? Something is happening. Trace logging off, something like that. Oh, okay. Sorry. Spelling mistake. Okay, cool. I think if you are observed same thing. See, that's also good thing. When you're doing mistakes sometimes, that is also different kind of knowledge. See, traces also they are giving. Now trace and debug lot of things you are getting. So understand what kind of messages they are giving in the trace. But as a developer, I'm telling you guys, trace 99% you will never write. So see, they are giving in-depth details, which are not really necessary to us also. At what time singleton bean is created, is it is cached or not. But as a learning curve point of view, when you enable these things, you can understand lot of internal details. You can understand a lot of internal details. See here, they are giving each and every information, which singleton bean object is created, from which package it is created, all the information it is. See, dispatcher servlet, creating instance bean of dispatcher servlet, all the information they are giving. Okay. So what I can show you one more thing is, yeah, mostly we have done that, but and drawbacks. So do we have any drawbacks with the logging means? No. But we have drawbacks only when you are doing the too much logging. So I mean, draw it. I should not call it as a disadvantages. I can call it as a things which we have to take care. Okay, we have to consider while logging. Develop as a developer point of view, what are the precautions we have to take? Okay, it's not a disadvantages. So what are the things we have to take care? Here it is. One thing is, don't log sensitive information, 19 sensitive information, especially credentials. So whether it is a debug log or whatever it is, we should never ever log the credentials. See, these things in the real-time applications point of view, I'm telling you. Okay. So that means credentials means especially passwords. Passwords should not be never ever logged in. That's why if you observed or not in the controller level, whenever I just written here, I taken just like email ID. So that means, I mean, in your local practice you can do no thing, but real time point of view I'm saying like. And second point is, yeah, this is the most important thing we have to remember. and you know which level what you have to use. And all. Second thing is, don't add too many logs also. Okay, so that means make sure the loggers are added. It's not like blindly I will add for every single line logic. I'll write huge number of logs. Okay, it may give lot of clarification to your application, but at the same time it will decrease your performance. It will decrease application performance also, guys. Why? Because see, somehow directly, somehow that is also a logic only, right? Whatever the loggers we are writing, JVM spending some time on these lines. That means what will happen? Automatically performance will come down. So that's why writing too many logs is also improve. I mean, it will impact your application performance. So that's why while writing the logs, we should know, okay, the scope of the log. Only specific scenarios where you feel like this is the way I want to as a, I mean, we should track everything. So such kind of scenarios only. See, I written one line. That's more enough kind of thing in this case. So that means where you will feel like it's not like sending data to service layer, receiving that response from the service layer. Very don't write that kind of logs every time. So because if you are added too many logs also, it will decrease your application performance. So these are the things only. One or small things you have to remember. I think now you may get one more question also. Sir, okay, you're saying like these are all logs added to the console, but what will happen every day? The applications will run months and months. Generally, what people will do is, I mean, in real time point of view, I'm telling you guys, these logs will be routed to some databases point of view or files level also people will store. So people will store some files level also. I think we can also do that. I think see here logging dot, yeah, logging dot file name. I think we can also collect these logs into file. Something I'm giving like logs dot log. You can configure this guys, okay? And extension will be dot log always. Log files extension will be dot logs. I don't know. I'm using this property. Let's try once again. Yeah, generally in real time, what we will do is these logs will be routed to the files. So whenever file size is, for example, per day one file. So what they will do is we'll configure like some 24 hours point of view, one file. So in the 24 hours, whatever the logs came, those are all stored in that file with the date like that. And again, whenever new calendar date is started, again new file will be created and old file will be stored as it is. Like that, you will maintain the history of logs also. So for that, you just explore it. You will get the solutions. But I don't think whether I can see something here. For that, you just need to go more details. Yeah, if you see here, what is this? Logs folder got created and a log is also created. App.log. See, those are all logs, console level, whatever you are seeing dynamically, those are all automatically added to the log file. So now what will happen? This file will be, sometimes what will happen? They will give only file to you and they will ask you, could you please analyze this file name, this file. So this is the log file. So just now if you open this log file, same you will see that. This is how people will store things in the log files. So see here, all the log messages are routed to where files. All the log messages. Now whatever the things you are doing, everything will be routed to the your log file. See all the messages simply routed to where our log file level. If you see here, user controller request, user controller token. So that means all the information is simply routing to the logs files. So that means Spring Boot framework is giving these things also. Even you can configure more properties. So just try to explore, but this information is more enough for you to work with real-time point of view. Don't worry too much. But if you want, you can route like this also. So see here, a file got created. Okay. Yeah, so this is all about the logging. So we understood very well about the logging, especially this is the most important thing you have to remember from out of all this discussion. The reason is writing log info error and all you understood very carefully. Okay, error means exceptional cases, warning just giving a suggestion. Info is the basic informations like this kind of messages. Debug is the only purpose is you will write the debug. Okay, token is received or not. So this will not be printed every time. Only when I enable debug, then only this will be printed. That kind of information you will write in the debug. Like that. But how to enable which package level, that is the most important thing you have to understand. That is simplified by the Spring framework, Spring Boot automatically. So only thing is you have to use this logging.level property and then you have to define the packages. So you are enabling based on the package level. Even you can enable at class level also, guys. Okay. Class level also you can enable. I want to enable only user controller level debug, not everything. Yes, just explore it. You will find out in the internet. So just explore it. Nothing. Just com.dilip it dot package name dot class name you will give and debug you will give. That's all. So class level is also possible. That means some reason you don't want to enable all the classes. Only this class point of view. I'm doing some work. Some issue is there in this method. That means in this Java class. Now I want to enable debug for only this class. Why I have to unnecessarily involve product controller, order controller, payment controller? I don't want. Then yes, you can do that. Only class level. So you just identify that. That's all. Just give the package name and class name. It will be done. So then Spring Boot will enable debug log only for that specific class, not entire package. So like that, you can customize the logging levels when you are debugging the applications. Class level also, you can do that. Okay. So with this, we are done with the logging also as part of the Spring Boot applications. So with this, we are done with completely Spring Boot framework, even core, JDBC, JPA, MVC module point of view. Now the last module, pending module is security module. So I'll start from tomorrow, Spring Security guys. So this will take almost 4 to 5 classes. We'll try to finish by this weekend, by Saturday, and next Monday onwards, we will see microservices. Okay, so let's connect tomorrow for the security module. What is the security? What is the importance of security? How to enable security in real-time applications point of view? We'll discuss all the details and we will see one example also. And then we'll start microservices. Okay, so that's all for today. If you have anything, you can ask me now.